This is Fells Point, Baltimore, June 11th, 2025. The bad guy pulls a gun out of his waistline. He ends up pressing it to the back of the victim's head, and he takes his keys and wallet, gives the keys to the female suspect, who starts moving towards the driver's side of the vehicle. This whole thing gets interrupted by a neighbor who hears his friend yelling because he's being robbed. So he intervenes by opening the door and yelling profanities at him. That was enough that caused them to flee the area on foot, taking the wallet and the keys with them. Hey guys, retired Lieutenant Todd Heaton with Humilitas First. Okay, let's break this one down. This is a high crime area of Baltimore. If you'd like to know the mapping that I'm using, just click on the barcode. It's currently set on the Violent tab. If you click on the More tab on the right, then you can find another list of crimes, including vehicle theft. That's a great one if you happen to be traveling. When I pick a hotel, I want to know which one's going to give me the highest probability my car's still going to be there in the morning. Our victim opens his front door, and as he begins to step out, he looks in the direction of an approaching couple, a male and a female. This is a timing thing. It's 11:30 at night in an area that has a high level of violent crime. So you should be thinking wrong place at the wrong time. Do you think that our victim knows this man and this woman? No, he does not know them. Do you see a steady stream of people walking up and down the street? No. Why? It's 11:30 at night. This is common sense. Probably nobody is going to be walking up and down this street for several more minutes. In some cases, for several more hours. So why do you have to step out, pop the trunk, and give this unknown couple a blind spot? Don't do that, because our bad guy just reached his apex point. That point where you have no real time to react. You're not even looking at him. You have entered the circle of trust, which was a mistake. You don't know this guy. What are you doing? He's so close. Once he pivots, 90 to 45 degrees, raises his gun, your torso is going to more than fill the backdrop of his street sight picture. He's so close, he's not going to miss. Watch his support hand reach for and lift his shirt, clearing the garment as he reaches for his firearm with his dominant right hand. Pivots, readies up, and guess what? You're done, because you're now just too far behind in the process of the draw. In other videos, I talk a lot about action beating reaction, and it beats it to a point and then no further. If you think you're going to outdraw this guy when he's looking directly at you and he's pointing a gun at you, it's more probable that any gun drawing plan that you have at this point, well, your reaction to his action of pulling his gun out, it's not going to beat his next action of pulling the trigger, because he sees you go for yours. This is the why behind the principle proximity is king. If you give somebody you don't know in a high crime area after dark close proximity, well, what you're really doing is giving them opportunity. A much better plan is when you open the door, you step into that threshold and you look left and you look right, and you see some people that you don't know walking down the street towards you. And not only that, but just look at the timing. The place that you want to go, well, they're going to be there in just a few seconds. They're going to be in close proximity to you, which gives them what? Opportunity. How about we skip all of this drama? And upon seeing that we have a timing problem with the potential meet and greet with somebody we don't know, instead, we simply just step back inside, shut and lock the door. They'll hear the deadbolt get thrown. Now, if you're worried about offending people, then my recommendation is you get over it and stop worrying, because this guy, this unjust criminal aggressor, well, he doesn't give a fat rat's rump what you think about him threatening to slaughter you if you don't give him what he wants. Where you live, work, and play, it matters a lot. For instance, say instead of living in Baltimore, Maryland, say you live in Rockville, population 67,000. I'm going to throttle back on this tactic. Why? Because the number of robberies is unbelievably lower in Rockville, Maryland, than they are in Baltimore. unless there's something more to the story. I put up a barcode so you can go to the website citydata.com. Keep this in your favorites as a tool for coming to better understand the areas where you live, work, play, or might be traveling to. In executive protection, the people who do that job, they typically do what's called an advance. Part of that advance would include doing some research. Crime mapping ought to be a part of that so that you know what to expect in the seams. This street is a seam for our victim here. If he had an executive protection team, they would look outside and then they would step back and shut the door and lock it. They wouldn't let him go out into the seam at this exact time because there's a timing problem with a couple of people that nobody knows. They're just passing through, like transient wolves. So when I look at crimegrade.org, that was the first tool. Well, it seems like Rockville has some bad areas. This is where a tool like citydata.com comes in because it can paint a much more detailed picture of what crime looks like in that community. Now, there's plenty of other crime mapping tools. I just happen to like these because they're simple and quick. So when I look at Rockville and I see these areas, what does that tell me? It tells me that if there's going to be a problem, there's a higher probability it's going to occur in one of these areas. Throttle control means if I live in Rockville, where for several years there were no robberies, unless there's some extenuating circumstances, like I don't like what I see, I'm not going to worry about somebody walking down the street if I need to go to my car at 11:30 and get something. I am throttling down. I don't need to be so strict with the tactics. But if I have to live in Baltimore or I have to stay with a relative in Baltimore, then I'm going to throttle up. Well, you better believe I'm going to have tighter tactics. Why? Baltimore has thousands of robberies each year. Thousands. We might call all of this that I just explained a long view or a long form of situational awareness. Situational awareness, it begins by you doing the work to know and understand what kinds of crimes and how many crimes happen in the areas where you live, work, and play. That's the beginning of becoming situationally aware. The short view, or you could call it the short form of situational awareness, well, that's going to include things like opening the door and seeing two people who you don't know passing by, which, because of where you are, because of the crime rate, the probability of your life being threatened with a firearm in this particular violent, high crime area, well, it's going to be a lot higher. So you might want to throttle up on the tactics, as Baltimore has thousands of robberies each year. Thousands.